Alright, the last video for today is about how is the rate of photosynthesis affected by temperature. And I asked you, look at this graph. Does it look familiar? Does it look like something you saw in a previous chapter? And I hope that it brings to mind enzymes, right? Because this graph is very similar to the graph of rate of enzyme activity against temperature, right? And we could split that graph up into 4 regions, remember? So how is the rate of photosynthesis affected by temperature? It's affected in the same way that the rate of enzyme activity was affected by temperature. And that's because photosynthesis involves enzymes. That's why it's also affected by temperature. So at point A, which is at low temperatures, the rate of photosynthesis is very low. And that's because the enzymes involved in photosynthesis are inactive. Or you can say that the enzymes involved in photosynthesis have a very low amount of kinetic energy. Right? So that's the same explanation as when we were talking about enzymes. Okay, so I'm going to leave the rest for you guys to do with just some hints for you. Now at point C, the rate of photosynthesis reaches its maximum. Now remember what we call this temperature? The temperature where there's the maximum rate of reaction. It's called the optimum temperature. So why is it that that is the case? Well, it's because at the optimum temperature, the frequency of collisions between the enzymes involved in photosynthesis and their substrates is at its maximum, right? So the explanation is exactly the same, except that when you talk about photosynthesis, make sure that you say enzymes involved in photosynthesis. So you are being very specific to the question, right? Don't just talk about enzymes, but talk about the enzymes involved in photosynthesis. And finally, at point D, we see that beyond the optimum temperature, as temperature increases, the rate of photosynthesis decreases sharply. And why is that? Well, the explanation is the same as enzymes again. It's because the enzymes start to denature. And again, be careful, be specific to the question of photosynthesis. Say that it is the enzymes involved in photosynthesis which start to denature, and then blah blah blah, right? The active site loses the three-dimensional shape, it is no longer complementary to the substrates, they're no longer able to bind and act on the substrate, and therefore the rate of photosynthesis decreases. Okay, so that needs to be really off the top of your head. Just apply explanation about enzymes, how enzymes are affected to temperature, apply that to how the rate of photosynthesis is affected by temperature. Alright, that's all. Okay, for the rest of the lesson, please work on worksheet number 2 and try to apply some of those ideas of limiting factors to the graph and get familiar with how rate of photosynthesis is related to temperature, light, and carbon dioxide concentration.